lost in that night where shadows held sway, gone to Taurizon, to that distant horizon, the promising light of the Estolian Way.
During my years in Great Britain, I grew captivated by ancient languages, especially the origins of our Estolian tongue. Of all the words I studied, two stood apart. Ceili, its origin remained hidden despite every effort, and Taurizon, whose roots sprawled wider than sense would suggest. In one Nubian dialect, Tauriz carried two meanings: to feed the starving and, astonishingly, heaven. I found many other potential roots from which it may have sprung, but the Nubian root was the only one that made sense. Both Ki and Mari were of Nubian descent, as was Shania, the extraordinary woman who was Tremaine's Ceili. With only 10 generations between Zacharias and that first set of twins, it was very likely that the fresh infusion of Nubian blood in the royal bloodline influenced the language. I now think of Taurizon as that eventual place where the hunger that I have tried to feed my entire life for knowledge will finally be appeased, though it take an eternity to do so. Taurizon is indisputably our word for the life after this life, wherein the purpose behind the grand design will become clear, and the most important elements of life, love and happiness, are eternal. Xavier Archimedes, Zacharian, Capitulo 86.
Jessica returned to their room with a newborn in her arms. For just a moment, Theo felt the shock of his cousin's anguish, severed from his soul. He recoiled inwardly from the depth of that pain and knew with certainty there was no way he could survive the loss of his Georgiana, his Ceili, his everything. Georgiana looked up at Jessica, took in the nearly white-haired baby swaddled in her arms, then frowned and dropped her gaze to Jeremiah, who was nuzzling at her breast.
Bethany wasn't strong enough to bear a child,
Jessica said, her voice tight with exhaustion and sorrow. Theo could see the loss had reached her deeply. She was from England, still something of a newcomer here, and the grief that now pressed on the room was unlike anything she had faced. In 2 years as the palace midwife, Jessica had witnessed countless births, none shadowed by loss until tonight. She'd never carried away more than tears of relief. To mourn a woman she'd tended, that was difficult enough. But Gregory's agony, so raw and immediate, cut into her as well. Jessica would carry this night for some time. After the funerals, Theo would make time to offer her a blessing.
Deity claims those whose time is short, giving them great happiness in this life and greater happiness in Taurizon.
Theo quoted one of the axioms of Estolia.
Gregory hoped that the two of you would be willing to raise Gregorio. Give him the love he deserves. Tell him about his parents,
Jessica said softly. She carefully guided the baby into the crook of Georgiana's left arm, adjusting her position so he could suckle comfortably, even without a hand. While the two infants nursed side by side, Theo assisted Jessica in tidying the room. When the babies finally drifted off, still clutching each other's hands, Jessica gently lifted Jeremiah, then Gregorio, and settled both in the bassinet. With the room quieter, Jessica spent another 15 minutes beside Georgiana, examining her, palpating her abdomen, then steadying her as she stood so that the soiled birthing bedding could be taken away and replaced with crisp linens. Once the bed was freshly made, Theo settled beside Georgiana, and Jessica brought both babies back to her. Gregorio had a full head of short, nearly white hair, while Jeremiah's was jet black. They looked like chess pieces.
I am told that the Queen is in labor,
Jessica said.
When I am finished with her, I will return to check on both babies.
Georgiana did not respond, having already drifted off to sleep. Theo barely registered Jessica leaving the room. His attention was on the two beautiful boys in his wife's arms. He gently caressed their downy heads, then closed his eyes and drifted off as well. When Theo woke, Gregorio was nuzzling eagerly at Georgiana's breast. Jeremiah, however, was fussing, his cries faint and uncertain. Theo reached out and touched his young son, and he was immediately inundated with images of Taurizon, more than he could process, more than he wanted to know. He blinked quickly, trying to fight back the tears that threatened to spill over. Deity was as close to Estolians now as at any other time in their long history, and wanted Theo to understand that there was more available to the children of Zacharias than this simple, faith-filled life they enjoyed for as many or as few years as Deity granted them. His son, Jeremiah, was one of the blessed of Deity, and would be given the full blessings available to all Estolians. But not in this life. Theo would share with Georgiana these revelations, but not yet. Now was the time for grieving, for Bethany and for Gregory, and yes, for Jeremiah. A soft tap at the door preceded Jessica's entrance. She smiled, some of her earlier turmoil replaced by relief.
Lazarus Ezekiel is the name of the new prince.
She announced, her voice lighter.
It was a swift, uncomplicated birth, and the queen was magnificent.
She paused at the bedside, brow furrowing as she regarded the two boys at Georgiana's breasts, especially little Jeremiah with his restless fussing.
Samuel is supposed to stop in and see you both in the next few minutes. Before he arrives, I want to examine Jeremiah closely. I'm not pleased with his color.
He lifted the tiny baby, Jeremiah, so perfect, and yet he was lacking something essential. He pressed the small baby to his chest, eyes shut against the rush of understanding overtaking his thoughts. Reluctantly, he returned Jeremiah to the midwife. In that instant, the child's soul departed, leaving only the empty shell of a child who needed no time on earth when compared to the other residents of Estolia. Theo felt as if his heart was almost ripped from his body. In this, as in all things, Deity provided the balm to ease the extreme pain of loss they would feel. Gregorio. They would raise him and give him everything he could ever need. And yet, the pain was still almost more than he could bear. He bit his lip to divert his thoughts from the spiritual pain towards a more bearable physical hurt. Georgiana opened her eye and looked down at the babe at her breast before looking at Theo. When she saw the tears streaking down his face, she looked from him to Jessica, and then she too felt the pain of separation. Theo could sense that Gregorio would heal his wife's pain in a way that a man could not understand. She would feel the wounds to their soul, but she was given the beautiful gift of a healthy baby boy to fill the void. He moved forward and climbed onto the bed next to his wife, holding her close, as they both looked at the perfect silver down on the head of the baby Deity meant for them to raise.
I had a vision.
He said softly, brushing the hair back from her one eye.
There is a profound, significant, deeply satisfying life beyond this one. We are children here in this mortal life. Deity shapes and guides us, prepares us to embrace all of the joys to be had in Taurizon. The blessed, those who are ready for Taurizon before they are born, need no time here in our waking world,
he said, closing his eyes on the truth. Whispering, he added,
Jeremiah is one of the blessed. Deity understood that we would need to give our whole hearts to Gregorio, so we were sent one of the most perfect souls to hold him briefly in our arms, to love him, and imprint him with our hearts and souls, so that he might take that little bit with him as he ventures into the next life. We will see him again, my love, and I have seen that reunion. He will watch over us all the days of our life and be there to greet us when we move on to our next great adventure.
Oh, Theo,
she said, accepting his words with the quiet faith unique to her most extraordinary soul.
will we?
She paused and glanced down at the child at her breast, as if afraid of offending him by her words. She looked up with tears glittering on her lashes and finished her question.
Will we ever have a child that is made from our two souls to raise here on earth? Or will we only ever have the promise of Jeremiah in Taurizon?
She was asking him to answer from the knowledge of his calling, rather than give empty, meaningless guesses. He felt the sweet warmth of Deity wash over him, and when he spoke, he knew she could hear the strength of a promise from Deity in his voice.
We will have a son and a daughter, in addition to Jeremiah in the next life, and the incredible added bonus of Gregorio in the here and now.
Her eye met his, seeing the truth within before looking again at the baby nuzzling with surprising vigor.
Gregorio, our beautiful son, may you be everything your parents would wish you to be in this world.
She reached up with her right hand and rubbed it over the silver down.
Jeremiah's cry.